Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi, hello, good evening, good morning. For those of you who may be in different parts of the world who may watch this later, hi, how are you? How you doing? How was your Christmas? Good afternoon, Lady Ola. How are you, my darling? How are you, my sweetheart? Mwah. Hello, Imbabazi. I hope I've pronounced your name properly. Good afternoon. Oh, thank you for joining me this afternoon. My name is Anastasia MacDonald. Which you may know by now, especially those of you who have been with me for the last, is it, how many weeks now? I think it's 8 weeks, so roughly two months. So my name is Anastasia MacDonald. I love my name. And today I'm going to be continuing my life story, chapter 3, part 1. Chapter 3, part 1. It's been an interesting journey. But before before I take you into that segment of my life, I'm going to be doing a couple of stuff. So first of all, how was your Christmas? How was your Christmas? I do hope. Hello, Folashade. Oh, my husband has logged in. Mwah. Good afternoon, Mochi. Good afternoon. Hi, sis. Compliments the season. Actually, I just wanted to find out how was your Christmas. Did you have a good time? Do you have a lovely time with your family, friends, frenemies, for that matter? I hope you did. Christmas is a wonderful time for family to meet and, to gather around and to enjoy one another. But more importantly, Christmas is all about Jesus, who is the reason for this season. Good afternoon, Ifeoma. Thank you for joining me this last day of the year. Can you imagine, beautiful people? Today is the 31st of December. Today is the 31st of December. It's the last day of 365 days. God has been so good, hasn't he? God has been amazing. It's such a privilege, to be alive. It's such an honor that God would, bestow his blessing upon us that we can see today. So good afternoon, Paul. Good news. My adopted son. Good afternoon. It's so wonderful to see you. Lovely to see you, Paul. Lovely to see you. And lovely to see everyone. Good afternoon, Gladys. Chisanda. Oh. Thanks. So guys, what a privilege and an honor it is to be alive. I'm sure you've all heard, what's his name passed away. Two celebrities. Is it three? As a matter of fact, three people passed away. All of it says Christmas was beautiful. Yes, the last day and Saturday. Yes, of 2016. Yes, can you imagine? And we are alive. What a privilege and what an honor. So I'm just full of I'm lost for words. I don't know how to say thank you to God, but to simply say thank you and to thank you for just having a wonderful family like yourselves. The last 6 months has been amazing, especially since I have this new Facebook family. So hello MJ, good afternoon. So yes, kings and queens, thank you for joining me live this afternoon. So once again, I've got my notes here. We can see I've got my notes here to help me to be articulate and cohesive. So before we get into the real deal, which is chapter 3, part 1, I just want to read this thing that I've written here. So we are all on our unique journeys, experience a gamut of highs and lows, which are hidden with rich meaning and purpose. So I just want to encourage you, especially as we are about to enter 2017, to begin to examine your story the chapters of your life and see what treasures are hidden amongst the rubble. That's where they're hidden. The treasures are hidden in the pain, the sorrow, all the down, the valley of the shadow of death. I just want to encourage you to next year. Good afternoon, Roger. So lovely to see you, and Happy New Year in advance too. So I just want to encourage you to examine your story, the chapters of your life, and see what treasures are hidden amongst the rubble and also the palace. And when you decide to share your story too, don't forget to invite me alongside. Don't invite me to come alongside you so that I can be a keen observer and watch what God is doing in your life. Good afternoon, Dee. Wow. Oh, Dee is one of my old-time, old-time friends from Ghana. When we became born again, she was one of my friends there. So good afternoon, Dee. So lovely to see you. Yeah. So today we're going to be diving in. And but I thought I'm going to be doing something just a little bit different. In the fact, I was thinking about my life stories, what I've done so far, and I feel that to make a smoother transition, I need to backtrack just a little bit to go back into chapter 2 towards the end, so that you have a more smoother transition into what's happening into chapter 3. So I'm going to go back just a little bit and share some very key events with you, so that you can understand what is happening in chapter 3. Good afternoon, Oluwatoyin. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chisandra. Chisandra said they're looking every day younger. Thank you very much. That's the God factor, apart from the other things, the bits that I'm doing. If you want to know the secret, just inbox me. If you want me to do some live, about the things that I do to keep me young, let me know and we'll see. Good afternoon, Shola. So anyway, so we're gonna start. So before we do that, just to remind you, for those of you who are joining me live and who don't know about my life story is made up of three main chapters. So I've got the chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Good afternoon, Chris. So chapter 1 is my life in the UK from 0 to 9 years. So my life in the UK, 0 to 9 years, and I share all the experiences in there. So I will repost that video. I don't want to go there to go so backward then before I go forward. So chapter 1, 0 to 9 years in life in the UK. Then chapter 2 of my life is life in Ghana, and that one is quite long. So from 9 years to 27. So excuse me. So there's an 18-year gap in Ghana, my life in Ghana. And I shared with you, the culture shock. I talked to you about my life in boarding school, how I hate boarding school, I beg your pardon. And then I shared with you about my spiritual awakening, meaning the journey of how I came to know the Lord. And then lastly, I shared with you about my how I came to meet my husband, the one whom I've been together with for 30 years. Can you imagine? Good afternoon, Siwu. Oh, please forgive me. Siju Wade. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me live this afternoon for my life story, chapter 3, part 1. So my life is made up of 3 main chapters. Yours too. I don't know how many chapters of your life, but it'd be good to do some homework and see what God is doing. So now let me just delve in. And oh, please don't forget to share. The share button is located on the left side of your screen. Good afternoon. And then if you have any comments, please comment along or comment in the comment section. And if we do get time, we could have a question and answer session. So you could ask me some things that are on your mind. So yeah, so we'll do that. And so we're now going to go backwards, as the song says, rewind. You know that song, rewind. So yeah, and so here we go. So I'm just going to read. Last 2 weeks, I left you in Ghana, sharing with you my experience of how I came to know the Lord, with many other young people flocking to 2 charismatic churches at the time, Christian Action Faith Ministry and ICGC, International Central Gospel Church, where I became a dedicated member. I also spoke about the events leading to how I met my husband and much later our marriage. Also, I also shared with you the unconventional means whereby God used a lady to get me my much needed birth certificate for my British passport, which had been a long struggle. It had been such a long struggle to get my, to get this birth certificate to do my British passport. Anyway, so we're newly married. So we got married. We got married the 20th October 1990. 20th October 1990. So here we were, a newly married couple. So what next? What do we do? And in those days, we didn't know what it is, to prepare for life, to plan for marital life. We didn't have that in Ghana. You existed. You just got by. You lived on the spur of moments. You lived on the whim, because things were not easy. They were not rosy. I mean, except you were from the very rich department. You just lived day by day. So now that we're married, what were we going to do? Where we're going to live? Now, my mom, she wanted us to come and live with her, but my husband said, no way, we're not going to live with your mom. So here are the key things that happened in chapter 2. So the last bit of the chapter 2. Now there were 3 mercy interventions by God, 3 key merciful interventions of our Lord and our God, this God who loves us so much. So enter God's mercy number 1. I had a friend, my husband and I, we were young people in our late teens, early 20s at the time. We had a friend called Eric. He worked at Ghana Airways. And so, obviously, the whole thing was about going to UK. In fact, my coming to the UK, it didn't really have anything to do with me. It had much to do with my mom. My mom was, she was, how do I say it? She was so into the fact that her daughter had to go back to the UK. She was pulling all the strings. She was doing everything to ensure that I could come back to the UK and start a new life. So that really wasn't my vision. Anyway, obviously, young people, we talk about these things. Most people dream about, the UK, because it was considered this land of gold. Anyway, so Eric worked at Ghana Airways, and I didn't know that during that time, as I talked about the travel, etc., that he had contacted a friend here in the UK and sorted out accommodation. And that person was a lady friend called Nikki. She lived here in the UK with her then boyfriend in a flat. So I didn't know that he had gone behind my back and was working behind the scene and had arranged for me to get accommodation in the UK. So God used Eric to sort out accommodation. So that's God's mercy number 1. The second one was that my husband Evans used to work at a telecom company called PNT. It's no more PNT. I've forgotten what it's called, but he used to work at this company, and obviously his job meant that he came into contact with a lot of customers. And my husband is the outgoing, bubbly. He has very good relationships. He makes friends very easily, and his nature meant that he made a lot of good friends. And one of this person was this woman. This woman, I was trying to ask my husband what was her name. He can't remember. Can you imagine? But anyway, this woman, she was wealthy, and she had a good relationship. So when we got married, and she found that we didn't have anywhere to go. Oh, Post, is it called? Oh, D said Post and Telecom. Is that what it's called today? Anyway, so so she said that we could. She had an empty flat. There was nobody there. The flat was just lying idle, and she said we could go and live there as long as we wanted. Can you imagine? Newly married couple, no plan, no vision, nothing. I'll tell you, when I look back, I wouldn't do things that way. With the knowledge that I received today, hubby and I wouldn't do things that way. But God is good. Anyway, so she said we could live there. So that flat was in a place called Ridge in Accra. It was an urban, suburban, lovely place, leafy place, all trees, very beautiful place. And so we moved there, and yeah, so we moved there as a newly married couple. It was so, I don't know, it was so, we were so immature. We were clueless. So anyway, so that was Enter God's Mercy number 2. So we found accommodation in this lovely place. Now, enter God's Mercy number 3. So I had got my ticket and everything was secure, so I was going to come. And then enter God's Mercy number 3, hubby had, because of his good customer relationship, there was this another, customer friend that, the friendship had developed like uncle and nephew kind of thing. And what do you call it? So he was wealthy too. Can you imagine? He was wealthy too, and he had been kind to my husband, and he'd been generous towards my husband. So my husband thought that, I don't have a ticket yet, and he thought, you know what, I'm gonna talk to this man and see whether I can get a ticket. And this wealthy man assured my husband that he would give him a ticket. You know how it is in Ghana. You need to have connections. Ghana is about whom you know. It's not about certificates and all that. That doesn't work in Ghana. I don't know whether it works today, but then as we're growing up, you needed to have connections. You need to know who the people, the right people, to get into right places. Anyway, so he spoke to me about it, and he promised that he'll get him a ticket. But unfortunately, it was as if my husband was like a cat chasing its tail, like a cat chasing its tail. It was like, come today, come tomorrow, come today, come tomorrow. You know that bit, that's very endemic in Ghana. Come today, come tomorrow. And so my husband was looking at the wrong person. But God is so good. Every time I look back, when I look back in Ghana, in spite of and despite all the difficulties, God was still at work. He was working behind the scene, and God, most of the time, he works silently behind the scenes in the person of the Holy Spirit. But because we are caught up in the difficulties, we are caught up in the harshness of life, we don't tend to see these things. Hello, good afternoon, Ochechuku. Good afternoon. Nice to have you on board, my king and royal brother. So anyway, so it was come, go, come, go, come, go. And then one day, we had this lady, this lady in ICGC, one of the church members. She worked at we've forgotten her name. Can you imagine? My husband can't remember the name too. Too much of the UK, too much comfort living has caused him to forget the woman's name. Anyway, so this lady woman, she worked at Egypt Air. And what I'm about to tell you, does it really make sense? She worked at Egypt Air, and it happened that her boss was returning home, was wherever he lived. He was moving back home. Good afternoon, Anthony Kujuk. Oh my God, it's been a long time. Good afternoon, Molly. Oh, my kings and queens. Good afternoon. So her boss was moving back home, and he had 7 tickets, and those seven tickets, 5 of those tickets were for himself, his wife, and his 2 or 3 children. So she found out about that he had extra tickets. And so this woman, can you imagine, went to the boss and asked, can I have one of the tickets, because I need it for my brother. And can you imagine, this boss of this lady gave her a ticket, and that ticket became the ticket for my husband. Now, you may not appreciate what I'm saying, but back in those days, tickets were like gold dust. Good afternoon, Queen TY, my royal sister. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. I know 31st is the last day of the year and you're busy. And RCCG Living Grace Durham, thank you for joining me this afternoon. So as I was saying, you may not appreciate, because today everybody comes to the UK. It's not a big deal. Coming to the UK is nothing. It is nothing right now. But in those days, for you to be able to come to the UK was a big deal. I said it was like gold dust. I love you too, TY. It was like gold dust. And so this woman, church member of ours, who's like an auntie, she gave the ticket to my husband. I mean, how does that make sense? How does it make sense? She could have easily sold that ticket for a lot, so she sorted everything and got him on to for flight for Ghana Airways. And so I just shared with you three key events in chapter 2. So the number one was Eric, who sorted out my accommodation for the UK, because nothing, my mom didn't make any plans. She didn't think of, how I was going to, if once I got in the UK, how was I gonna live? Well, how I was going to fend myself. Hers was, you just got to get into the UK, so he sorted Eric. And I'm not sure whether I mentioned to you that he passed away. I think he passed away either last year. Yeah, he passed away. He was in the UK, but passed away with a, from a heart condition. God bless that guy. So that was entry God's mercy number 1. And entry God's mercy number 2 was the fact that as a newly married couple, we had nowhere to live. That was not, it wasn't thought of. We didn't think about planning. I mean, in those days, who thought about all those things? It's today that we have so much knowledge. In Christendom, I don't think, people have an excuse to fail in the mind, because there's so much teaching out there, about preparing for marriage, etc., etc., especially with Pastor Sunday Adelaja, who is my best mentor. Yes, TY, may so rest in peace. If it hadn't been for, if Eric hadn't obeyed and done what he did, I don't know. So, that's why I'm saying to you that, just begin to examine your life. Look at the key people that God is using to push his agenda in your life. Look back and you realize that there's so much treasure and so much riches hidden in the rubble of your story. And like I said to you, I didn't tell Eric to sort out accommodation for me. I didn't tell him. He went behind my back and sorted everything. So when he came to tell me that, I've sorted out your accommodation, I was like shocked. In fact, I was not even ready. I was not even ready to ready for the whole fact that he had sorted that out, and like I said, so God's mercy number 2 was the fact that this wealthy woman, Ghanaian woman, had a flat in a very beautiful place called Ridge lying empty, and she said, okay, you can have it, go and live there. He gave us the keys, we moved in, and that's where we lived before we moved to the UK. So I thought I needed to share these key events to you before we get into chapter 3. And then enter God's mercy number 3 was this gentleman that was a customer of PNT that my husband used to serve and sort out the telephone issues and any inquiry. He was wealthy and he became like an uncle to him. And the ticket thingy, which didn't, even though he was generous, it didn't, translate into getting a ticket. But somebody who was a church member, and this lady, it wasn't like, we had a very close relationship with her in ICGC, which is International Central Gospel Church. It wasn't like we had a very close, she was a member of ICGC, and we were all there. I mean, all of us who were part of ICGC, actually, we were how would I put it? Because we were the first fruit of the move of God. So we were very close. So you didn't have to like know the, how do I put it? You didn't have to be close, but there was this bond between members of ICGC. There was this bond. If so long as you were part of ICGC, then there was you were a brother, you were a sister. That's how it worked out. We didn't have to know your story. We didn't have to know your issues. We didn't have to know you were a brother. You were a covenant brother. That's how it was. Good afternoon, Lady Nkuruth, and good afternoon, the Queen, Kings and Queen. Thank you for joining me live for my life story, chapter 3, part 1. So this woman, there wasn't any close thing going on. Yes, D says we looked out for each other. That's very true. We looked out for each other. And it was so comfortable being part of ICGC. You were not isolated. TY says, yes, those days, church families were tight. Oh, yes, you're very right. It's not today, especially, I don't know what it is back home, but in the UK, it's not. The love thing is not really at work. But there was this strong bond. Good afternoon, Rachel. Thank you. Um, Happy New Year to you, Lady Nkuru. But there was this strong bond between us. So, like I said, when oh God, she sought to get the ticket for my husband, and she gave the ticket to my husband. And in those days, she could have easily sold that ticket for a lot of money. But you see, God was also behind the scenes. So anyway, we're going to be now transitioning into chapter 3. Now, by the time I came to the UK, so I moved to the UK January 1991. So we got married October 1990, and I moved January 1991. And at the time that I moved, my husband had not got the ticket yet. So the events that I'm sharing with you were a result of, afterwards. And so I came to the UK, and I arrived in the UK. It was, you know how the UK is with the weather. It was a gray morning. It was raining. Good afternoon, Queen Fumi. Good afternoon. It was raining. It was boring. It was dark. And when I got to the UK, unfortunately I was under the weather. I became despondent. I was scared. I felt all alone. And this lady that I said, Nikki, that I got the accommodation from, she herself and her boyfriend, they came to the airport to pick me up. She didn't have to, but like I said, Eric had organized all that. She came to pick me up from the airport and took me home. And yes, winter. Yes, thank you, TY, for reminding me. It was winter. It was really, really, really cold, raining, cold, dry, boring. It was coming from, the hot, humid Ghana. And so I remember when I arrived, I felt so alone. I said, not again. So isolated. And this Nikki, oh, good afternoon, Priscilla from Ghana, joining me live with D. Good afternoon. Thank you. And so it was, I was feeling, lonely, isolated. In fact, shamefully, I just broke down and began to cry. Good afternoon, my daughter, Priscilla. Not my daughter, but my lovely spiritual daughter. She's such a pretty lady. So I just broke down and I cried in front of this, my new, what do you call it? The lady that was, that been so kind for me to live. I just couldn't help it. I just began to cry and sob. I couldn't help myself. But she was very kind and she looked after me. And then obviously the both of them, she and her husband. Oh, good afternoon, Pastor Obi. Oh, thank you so much for joining me live. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. You're very welcome, Pastor. You're very welcome. And here I was. When I got married, I was 27. Yes, I was 27. I was 27, but I looked like a baby then. God, I don't know whether I can find pictures. Good afternoon, Pastor Obi. Hello. And anyway, so they would go to work, and I'll be left all by myself. So can you imagine? Here I am in the UK, no mother, no father. My father was here. DY said you were missing your husband as a newlywed. Yes, I was. And you see, the fact was that I didn't know when my husband would be joining me in the UK. I didn't know whether he would, if he would, could he, So it was a question of, it could be like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I didn't know. Lady Grace said, I can imagine if you look 16 now. Yes, I looked like a baby, actually. I did. And so I was scared. Like I said, there was no vision, no plan, nothing. And trust me, I wouldn't do that again if I had to turn back the clock. And so they would, the couple go to work, and then this lovely lady, she would say, please don't touch the telephone. So I had no form of communication. The only thing I had was the TV. The only thing I had was the television, and it was very frightful. It was very intimidating. It was like, oh Lord, how long am I going to be living this life? And not only that, I'm going to share this funny thing that happened. Because Nikki, the one who gave me the accommodation, she knew I was a Christian. She was so kind, to take me to my first service at a small ICGC branch in the UK. And guess what I did? My mindset was still in Ghana. Here I was, put on my high heels, put on my summer wear, and went with her to my first service in the UK. Oh, people, you don't want to see me. My feet were frozen. I don't know why she didn't tell me that I had the wrong footwear. My feet were frozen, and as we were walking towards this church service, well, I was so sad, so foolish. So everything was just basically, I was a stranger back at home. Nothing was familiar. I didn't recognize anything. It was as if I was never born in the UK. Everything was isolated. I mean, who was I going to call? Who was I going to call? Who was I going to talk to? I was not allowed to use the telephone. How would I know when? Yes, I'm going to talk about the locations in a minute, and DY. Who was I going to talk to? It was just a matter of hoping and praying that my husband, I was fresh. Yes, I was a JJC. I don't know whether you call it the same in Nigeria. I was a Johnny just come. Johnny just come. So, and can you imagine the how do you call it? The irrationality with all the no plan, no vision, no nothing. You come into the, like Pastor Sunday Adelaja has been saying, oh, what, like, I need you to help me to come to the UK. Okay, if I help you to come into the UK, what are you going to do? Nothing. Yeah, I was a JJC, Johnny just come. There was nothing to my life. For my mom, her vision was just get into the UK. Just get into the UK. That's all that mattered to her. Whatever happened after that was not part of the plan. But I understood where she was coming from at the time. 1 second, please. I need to drink some water. My throat is dry. Thank you. So here I was, and just hoping and praying. But God being so good, God being so close. My husband knew the lady's telephone number. So God being so good, I think it was in the second week at this place that I found out that my husband had got his ticket and that he will be joining me. Oh, the joy. Oh, the joy of my husband coming to, of coming to the UK to be with me. And I remember, meeting him at the airport in his 3-piece suit. I mean, who comes to the UK with a 3-piece suit? That is the Johnny just come mentality with this. I think it was this green 3-piece suit. You are going to the UK, you need to dress. You need to dress. You're going to the UK, the land of gold, the land beyond. Anyway, so seriously, guys, so my husband joined now. Yeah, we're going into secret. Now, just as I said, in Ghana, I lived in 5 geographical locations. In the UK, I lived, I'll say, 6 geographical locations, 6 including the first place. So, I beg your pardon. So, location number 1 was Neasden, where I lived with this wonderful lady. Good afternoon, Janet. I lived in a place called Neasden. That was location number 1, where I spent 2 weeks. Location number 2 was a place called Battersea. Good afternoon, Pastor Abraham. Great. My not so far away neighbor that I haven't seen for a while. Pastor Gray, don't be angry with me. I'll come and visit you. Don't you worry. I'll come. I'll come and visit you and the family. Don't worry. And it's so Battersea was the location number 2. Location number 3 was a place called Norbury. Good afternoon, Bola. Um, Location number 3 was a place called Norbury. Location number 4 was a place called Tootingbeck. Location number 5 was a place called Wandsworth. And in Wandsworth, I lived in 3. We moved 3 times within that small area. So Wandsworth, and then location number 6, and hopefully is a we never know, is Milton Keynes, where I now live with my husband and the children that I have now come home and will be leaving very soon. Good afternoon, Patty. So 6 main locations. And what I've noticed is that everywhere you live, I think it's very important to take your time to examine what is happening in those locations, because there are, there are learning points there, there are lessons there, there's rubble, especially where, there's been much difficulty and trials and temptations and all matter. There is rubble hidden in those places. And trust me, my coming to the UK didn't mean that my troubles had ended. In fact, I would say probably they even had magnified, that magnified, like Pastor Sunday Dillinger says, when you get married, if you had one problem when you were single, when you get married, they multiply 10 times more, because now there's 2 of you. Because when there's one of you, you have your issues that you're dealing with, and then when there's 2 of you, they double use. Everybody's bringing all their stuff. You get what I mean? So I lived in 6 main locations. Now, the first place that we moved to was a place called Battersea, as Dee mentioned, a place called Battersea. Now, once again, my husband had a friend, a very good friend, was in Ghana. And so he, unbeknown to me, had arranged for us to go and live in this place called Battersea. So we lived in a high-rise tower. It had 23 floors in a very lovely area near, it was in a place near the River Thames, and it was a very beautiful place with green grass, trees, flowers, etc., etc. And so we moved and we went to live in this high-rise flat. And I've forgotten what floor we lived on. And this person had, at that time, had a young daughter. Good afternoon, Joy. Waited. So that's where we moved to. So if I told you that, so we had this single room to ourselves with a single bed, people, we both slept on a single bed. So that should tell you the measurements and the dimensions of our physical bodies then. Both of us slept I'm not talking about a double bed or a 1.5 bed, but on a single bed. That should tell you how skinny and lean, the remnant of Rollins, Rollins rule at the time. So that place became our dwelling place. Now, as a young married couple, what's next? What next? How do we survive? What is the plan? What is the vision? How do we go from there? No plan, no vision, nothing. Good afternoon, Queen Elizabeth. You're late. The Queen of all the queens. Elizabeth says that I'm sorry, darling, I came late or went for a walk with David before he screams the house down. Oh, I understand. You're a wonderful mother. You needed to do what you need to do to look after the king himself, King David. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. So there was no plan, no vision, no nothing. Everything was living on the spur of the moment. That's the being spontaneous. I tell you that I will not do that again. And trust me, I've been talking a lot to the boys about, you know, the importance of planning, the importance of a future. And I've been forwarding Pastor Sunday. I did just videos on you know, the series on the your parent is my hair. I've forgotten the title, but I've been forwarding those to my children, and I've been using the analogy of a house. When you're building a house, the foundation is very important and very, you know, very critical. One thing I thank God for is ICGC, the church where I attend for Dr. Mensa Otabil, who gave us a very good, I must say, he gave us a good foundation, because when the storms began to blow, as it does blow, because Jesus did say, you know, when he talks about the house that was built upon the rock and the house that was built upon the sand, he says that when the storms blow, Jesus didn't say that if the storms blow, he said when. So it doesn't matter who you are, or what you are, or what you have, the storms will blow in your marriage. That is this part of life, and storms really are there to mature us. Storms are there to groom us, to grow us, you know. So we were very immature. Like I said, I was 27, my husband was 28, and we're here, we were in this UK. I didn't know nothing. I didn't know nothing. I didn't know nothing. So in a sense, in one sense of the word, we were dependent on our generous lady, the one who had taken us in. You know, is that wise? No, it's not. But you see, God in his rich mercy, you know, that when I was just looking back at our life, and I said, you know, we do so many dumb stuff, but God, who is rich in mercy, looks after us. God, you know, we do a lot of dumb stuff, and trust me, I've done a lot of dumb stuff, and I really thank God for his mercy, because when you experience his mercy, you learn to show mercy to others. So more or less, she was the one, you know, looking after us. And then like I said, I did say to you that I'm not going to fluff up my story, because when I fluff up my story, that is not my story, and God does not receive that. And so later on, we found out that if you're, you know, if you're not working, you are entitled to some form of benefit, you know, from the government. So in fact, it was the lady, she helped us. Rachel said, "You bet." So she made us aware of at that time some of the benefits that one could get as somebody who was not working or didn't have that. So we discovered certain benefits that we were entitled to that help us start our journey. I'm looking at the time here, so because I don't want to keep you for long. So that helped us in the start of our journey. I don't know what would happen if we didn't have those benefits. And I really thank God for, at that time, yes, Ola says we give God praise for his mercies. Very, very true. We give God for his mercy. God is very rich in mercies. You know, mercies is, well, how do they say it? Mercies is giving you what you don't, is it what you don't deserve? And then grace is, I've forgotten the, but anyway, God is very, very, very rich in mercies. And so all that, you know, that kind of like we had like a kind of financial foundation for us that helped us, you know, to help us to manage for a little bit, for a while, until we now hit roadblocks. We now hit roadblocks. So like I said, at that time, I didn't have any education. I didn't have, no, I'm talking about now that I've moved to the UK. I didn't have much to my name. Now, so who was I at that time? At that time, I was still, even though I was a Christian, even though I had received a new heart, but I was not new in my mind. I still had the old way of thinking in my mind. And don't forget, I have shared with you all that through the chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the mindset that was going on, that was operating in my mind at the time. And I was still very much, you know, intimidated, so much very afraid, so much shy, so much into myself, so much very withdrawn. A lot of my conversations are in my head. A lot of my pain is you know, inside of me. And as a matter of fact, is there's not so much that, you know, at the time that I could you know, share with my husband, because I'd learned to from childhood, you know, my experiences had taught me that you are alone, you are by yourself, you know, by the foster, by being from babyhood, being sorry, from babyhood, living from with a foster mother and all that, that aspect of being with somebody else, having to be looked at by somebody else, somebody who was not my parent, and the fact that my mom was not the one that, you know, nurtured and raised me. I was it was more like, I how do I say, it was more like I was a nuisance. So I felt like I had to be handed to somebody else all the time. So it made me feel that I didn't have any belonging, I didn't have any status, I didn't have any identity. I was somebody else. Rachel says, I feel like you're sharing my story. Really? Oh wow. Rachel says, I feel like you're sharing my story only from a married woman's perspective. Very interesting. I'd love to hear your story, Rachel. So that was my viewpoint, as Pastor Sandy has been teaching us. That was my belief system. I was a nobody, and it didn't matter what you said to me. And in fact, you know, going through the school system, as Pastor Sandy has been teaching, you know, you what you are today is a result, is a sum total of your upbringing, the people who have been in your life. That is that you are a sum total of all of that. So at that time, the sum total of what I had was that, you know, I was an unwanted child. I was a child that was supposed to be have been aborted. I was the child of a foster child. I was not, you know, I was not nurtured by my mom. I was after, you know, after the breakup of my parents, I was like, okay, you go and join your mom. My, you know, after my dad got us to come to Ghana, I can't handle you, so off you go. So it was always a case of, I was the remnant of, you go there, you go there, you don't belong to me. You know, that sense of of not belonging. And so so that is what I was, that is who I was, sorry, at the time when we moved to the UK. So then what was my spiritual state? I'm just looking at the time. What was my spiritual state at that time? Now, don't forget, I had just become a Christian, just become born again, and I was on fire for the Lord. I could not get enough of the Lord. My husband could not get enough of the Lord. I mean, we were on fire for God. And then we come into the UK, and it was like, the spiritual climate in the UK was almost zero. I mean, a lot of people who come to the UK, you know, you just find yourself compromising in one way or the other. And so anyway, by God's grace, we happened, you know, to find a church called, a small, very, very small church called True Vine Church. True Vine Church. When a friend of ours, a friend of my husband's, who was a pastor, was then, you know, one of the pastors at the time in that small place. And so that is where we began to fellowship. We began to fellowship. But like I said, things were totally not the same. And that also, I feel like that also impacted my, how to say, my demeanor at the time, because the God factor back in Ghana had really kind of like boosted me in a kind of way, because that was, you know, I had something to look forward to, and then also having ICG as a family. Oh, do you remember True Vine? Oh, really? I don't remember you coming to True Vine. Really? Okay. Oh, wow. So what I was saying. So coming to the UK, the spiritual climate basically was cold, very, very cold. And so I didn't have that fire to what is it, to hold me, even though we were going to church. So we both started going to this church, and I was in the background, and how I got into the choir, I can't remember. It was a small praise and worship team. So, but I joined the praise and worship team. Can you imagine me, Anastasia, the quiet one, the one who's always hiding in the background? God must have done something. God must have, you know, moved beyond my consciousness and caused me to, oh, and do I say you took my sister and I was there? Okay, yes, you did. Your sister, I've forgotten her name. Yes, you did. So we started joining. We started attending. True Vine Church with this wonderful, wonderful pastor called Pastor Ray and his wife, Pastor Susie. Where they're a Ghanaian couple, love the Lord so much. So that is where my life was. So I'm going to be stopping here at the moment, and I would want to ask you, do you have any questions? Because I don't want to be talking to you at the time. I feel like, it would be good if you've got any questions, to ask me, maybe things that I haven't considered. So Elizabeth Ali says, United Kingdom has a compromising spirit. Definitely. Definitely. Because what I noticed that other people, other friends that also managed to come and live here in the UK, started compromising, here a little, there a little, because, it was like, you had to survive, and it was concern for myself. I mean, obviously I was British born, so I didn't have to go through some of the challenges that my friends or my counterparts had to go through. So before you know it, you were compromising here a little, there a little, and then the fire began to subside. Back home it was an inferno. That was what we were carrying. We were carrying an inferno, and gradually I saw that subsiding. So, oh, good afternoon, Pastor Cecil. Pastor Cecil Addy is watching me in live. Good afternoon. So nice to have you. Pastor Cecil is one of the pastors of True Vine Church that I was talking about. So yeah. So just want to ask you, do you have any questions? What is it that you want to, find out about me when I was in the UK with my husband? I would love to have your questions. Now let's have a look here. Rachel. Okay. Rachel was saying to Elizabeth, it's not just the UK, it's all Western. And yeah, as a matter of fact, it is a Western thing, because obviously God is not on the throne in the UK. Everything else is on the throne. Another thing I forgot to mention is, the community spirit that we take for granted. Back home, having that community. You even though, like I said, I had the issues that I was going through back in Ghana, but you can guarantee that everybody was your auntie and everybody was your uncle, whether you were related to them or not. The auntie and the uncles are there to look out for you. D says, so at this time you still do not have contact with your dad. Thank you for asking this question, dear. No, I did not. So when I came into the UK, I still don't have any contact with him. We tried contacting. We did call him. As a matter of fact, one day, my husband and I drove to his house. We did make a phone call, which was picked up by his wife. So my stepmother at the time. Good afternoon, Jake. Excuse me. So we did drive to his place, and who opened the door? His wife. Did she let me in? Nope. I was not allowed entrance. I was not allowed to see my dad. Can you imagine that? The dad that I had last seen at the age of 9, his wife refused us, me and my husband, entrance into the house. In fact, she told us that my dad was asleep. What's that got to do with a daughter wanting to see her dad? So there again, I am faced with rejection. There again, I am faced with rejection. I cannot even see my dad. And even after that, when we had to go back, because it was, I think it was about, I can't remember whether we drove to the place or we took the train. I can't remember. I think we drove. I'm not sure. But even after that, my dad didn't call me to, to say that, oh, I hear you're back. I hear you came. I'm so sorry that such and such happened. So sorry. So glad to have you. Oh, my daughter, I've missed you so much. That didn't go. That didn't happen. It was much later that I got a phone call. Good afternoon, Jake says, Sweet 16. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, King Jake. So that's it to do with I've got 5 more minutes and I'm gonna have to end. So does anybody else have any question that you would like to ask me? Any questions? Any questions as a 27 and 28 newly married couple in a foreign land? Anybody questions? Let me see. Let me have a look at what other people have said. Let's see. Apart from Rachel says that she feels like sharing my son. I'm just wondering, can anybody does this ring a bell? Okay, I've seen a question come here. Pardon me. Sandra says, how do you relate with your mom now? Does she at times regret all that she has allowed you to go through? The way I relate with my mom, it is still, it is still the, how do I say, the traditional cultural way. Back home, I don't know about you, but in Ghana, you don't have this kind of close pally friendship with your mother. Your parent is somebody you look up to, you respect, and whatever they say goes. Whatever they say, you obey, you do. So it is more of like how do you call it? There's this reverence. That's it. There's no like intimacy. There's no real closeness. So up to date, I still kind of have that relationship with her, and I think one of the broadcasts I did say that that I tried hugging my mom last, it was 2 or 3 years that she came, but even though I hugged her, she felt uncomfortable because that's not what has been between us. So we do talk. I mean, yesterday I called and spoke to her, was encouraging her and all the rest. We do talk, but that intimacy, like the relationship I have with my children is very intimate. I mean, I kiss, cuddle, hug, even though they are 24, 21. I'm very close with my sons, but I didn't have that with my mom, and it's not. But I have let sleeping dogs lie because I have understanding now. Yes, respect. Yeah, King Uchechukwu says it was, yeah. So it's more of a respect relationship. You didn't do those huggy, touchy, into no. And so that is still there. We still talk a lot, and I've just let sleeping dogs lie because I have understanding. I have understand where the Lord has taken me from to where I am today, and that's okay. That's okay. So it's 3 minutes to 3. I have kept you for almost an hour, and I'm going to stand here. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here, and I just want to thank every one of you so much for joining me this afternoon. Today being the last day of the year, I would like to wish you a very prosperous new year, a very prosperous 2017, and I am looking forward to seeing a lot of conversion amongst us kings and queens. I'm looking forward to us doing exploits for the Lord. I'm looking forward to us growing in the Lord, but more importantly, making an impact in our generation. So have a wonderful 2017, excuse me, and I look forward to seeing you. By the way, before I forget, I will not be live next week Saturday because I'm going to Ukraine for Pastor Sunday's HMT, which is History Makers Training, an intensive 1-week intensive leadership training. So I'll be going to Ukraine to be with my best mentor in the whole wide world. So I'm leaving tomorrow for Ukraine, so I will not be meeting with you next week Saturday, but I will be with you on the 14th of January 2017. Thank you so much, and I'm going to bring you news from Ukraine, Kiev, and from the History Makers training. So I guess Pastor Sandy will be doing things. He's going to do it live. He hasn't told us yet. I don't know whether they're going to have it live. So perhaps you may see me live in Ukraine, and I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm a bit nervous, to be honest with you. I'm a bit nervous, but it's all good because I'm going alone. But thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful 2017. I know most of us are going for the crossover. If you're going to crossover, whatever you're doing, I love you very much. I love and I appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye, kings and queens. Bye. Bye, Joy. Bye, Elizabeth. Bye, Rachel. Bye, G. Bye, Lady Lio, ladies, all the ladies and all the queens and all the handsome men. Thank you so much, and please don't forget to share, and then put your questions down. Thank you so much. Love you loads, Lord. Love you. Love you. Love you. Bye. See you on the 14th of January. Bye. 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 It's 3 o'clock. Got to go. Bye. 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 Bye.